Up next is Solgold. Nick Mather, CEO, is a geologist with over 35 years' experience in exploration and resource development. His career has taken him to numerous countries exploring for precious metals, base metals and fossil fuels. Nick has been involved in many discoveries during his career, and Solgold's Cascabel copper gold project in Ecuador is no exception. Coming in remote, I believe, is Nick Mather.
Thank you very much, all, for having me. It's certainly a bit of a challenging time that we have before us, but I'll give you the high-level and very exciting story about Solgold. Solgold is an emerging copper-gold major. We're not just focused on one deposit; we're focused on a whole country. Ecuador represents a 700-kilometre-long section of three parallel metallogenic belts in the Andean copper belt, and with great excitement that we've positioned ourselves to have a rather dominant position from a porphyry exploration point of view on this very exciting sector of the Andean copper belt in Ecuador. So, corporate snapshot: we have just over 2 billion shares on issue and a healthy market capitalisation now, but it's one that still doesn't match the value of our projects and the potential value of that very exciting pipeline of exploration opportunities that we have in the country. Our major shareholders are BHP, Newcrest, and a company that I'm an executive director of, DGR Global, listed on ASX, and all of us, and indeed Franco-Nevada, who've put up the last financing for us with the sale of a 1% royalty in our main deposit, Alpala, can see the upside not only for gold but for copper resources in Ecuador and in Alpala, our major deposit, and in the exploration portfolio generally. We're well covered by a number of institutions and banks in London and North America, and you can see there that the target prices, which are based basically on their internal analyses of our flagship Alpala project, are many multiples of our current share price, which currently sits at some 39 pence. So, our project status: our main deposit, Alpala, has 22 million ounces of gold and around 10 million tonnes of copper, as per mineral resource estimate number 3, which came out some time ago and has recently been revised. We are currently completing a pre-feasibility study, and that's quite complex, but it's nearing completion. We have already identified the major work areas that we need to address to collect the data for the completion of the feasibility study, which we are targeting to come out towards the end of calendar 2021. So we've got 6 rigs working at Alpala collecting geotechnical and metallurgical cores to inform more metallurgical work and the very important geotechnical work to design the cave plan and the mining schedules and get a better handle on some of the metallurgical recoveries as we progress towards the full feasibility. I'm a geologist, as the chairman indicated, and I'm wedded to exploration and discovery. It's the best way to add value for your shareholders, and that was where Solgold got its original $1 billion market capitalisation from. We've just made another very exciting, massive porphyry discovery at the Porvenir project in southern Ecuador. It really endorses the blueprint that we've developed for the identification and exploration and discovery processes that we developed at Alpala. We're applying that all through this very exciting belt. We've got 14 targets, as I'll explain later, and we think that a great number of these can eventually turn into Tier 1 copper-gold resources, much the same as Alpala has. So more on Porvenir later. We have already started drilling at Blanca and La Hueca, and we're about to start at Rio Mario. So we're working on a sort of resource version of shock and awe. It's like a military campaign for us. We have 4 different subsidiaries, all wholly owned and unencumbered, working on these projects throughout Ecuador, and I'll explain a bit about that later. So next slide, please. The major objectives that we have on our slate at the moment to have the value of Solgold recognised in the market is to address, first of all, the worries that people have about Ecuador, and we believe that they're fading. The presence of the Mirador porphyry operation, Lundin Gold's Fruta del Norte project in southern Ecuador, BHP's and Newcrest's investment in us, and indeed Newcrest's very substantial several $100 million investment in Ecuador through Lundin Gold, and Franco's recent investment in our project with the 1% royalty on Alpala, and Fortescue's very large exploration project in the country, all show that the global perception of Ecuador as a mining destination and a safe mining destination is improving, and we expect that to only improve. People, of course, always have worries about commodity prices. There are some great tailwinds for both copper and gold, particularly with copper. The world is urbanising and electrifying, and the pace of that is gaining, and we can see a lot of potential upside in the copper price. And of course, with gold, you print somewhere north of $5 trillion of relatively worthless paper by governments, OECD nations during quantitative easing. It reports as a much higher gold price denominated against those currencies. So as we go through to feasibility and ultimate development of Alpala, we expect to see continued strength and possibly price increases, particularly in copper. We recognise the transition from explorer to explorer and developer is a very intense one, and we're augmenting our management team and board capabilities to deal with this evolution. And you'll see some announcements over the next couple of months in respect of board additions and additions to the management team to effect an efficient transition. We have a great exploration pipeline, as I mentioned before, and I'll continue to refer to this because it's the best way to add value for your shareholders. Start with nothing, work on a very big project with a very big model, think big, and deliver a big resource. That's what we did with Alpala. That's what we'll continue to do, and Porvenir is just the beginning of it. Block cave mining is the chosen mining method for Alpala, and we can see this being broadly applicable on these vertically extensive porphyry systems with high-grade cores in them throughout Ecuador. They have great environmental advantages, and of course the operating costs are very low. So we're working hard to collect the geotechnical data that we'll need to inform a reliable feasibility study, hopefully by the end of 2021. People may ask, how are we going to develop a $3 billion mine against a $1 billion market capitalisation? Well, the way we're working on that is by looking at the quality of the ore body. It's very spiky front-end cash flow models. It's a banker's dream from a number of points of view, and we're getting a lot of inbound interest in providing that $3 billion, and we'll attempt to steer ourselves towards putting conditional term sheets in place, the major conditions being completion of feasibility, getting the permits organised and working out the financial fiscal regime with the Ecuadorian government. So we're working on all of these things in parallel. We're not taking it sequentially. We're doing it all in parallel so that we can get hopefully to development decision for the first development, Alpala, somewhere close to the end of 2021. Next slide, please. The strategy to do this has been very much based on endearing ourselves to the nation of Ecuador at all levels, from individual employees to their families, their communities, the provincial governments and the national government. We're going to help Ecuador to help us. Ecuador needs a mining industry, and they've shown a great deal of constructive effort in working with Lundin Gold and a number of other explorers and hopefully eventually developers in the country. Alpala itself can ultimately provide around 4% of the GDP of Ecuador, and once we get a couple of these tier one world-class projects going, we can have a very transformational effect on the economy of Ecuador and positively touch the lives of most Ecuadorians. So we're not just a single project company, we're building an entire copper gold business in a country where we're able to replicate what we've learnt at Alpala on the other projects all through the Ecuadorian sector of the Andean copper belt. We're looking at similar geology, the same regulatory regime, similar physical environment, same social structures, and we don't therefore need to reinvent the wheel every time we go to a new project. And this gives us a tremendous competitive advantage when you're looking at sourcing capital for successive projects. On top of that, of course, we have the high-grade nature of these projects, which in their cores provide very rapid capital payback. And this all comes from some of the gross geological characteristics of Ecuador, which I'll touch on a little bit further into the presentation. So copper and gold prices I mentioned before, we're particularly enthusiastic about copper. Global copper resources are falling. Alpala itself represents around 10% of the copper and gold resources that have been discovered in the last 10 years in the world in one deposit. We own only 85% of that, but in the not too distant future, we're going to see a supply deficit, and that's certainly going to support some price increases. In addition to that, concentrate quality is falling, and we hope to be able to fill that hole in concentrate quality as well. From a gold point of view, as I mentioned before, the US alone has printed nearly $5 trillion worth of extra paper. You denominate that against a much more finite gold resource, and you can see that the gold price has definitely got to be increasing. I think we've only just seen the beginning of it. I'm sure there won't be too much disagreement with me on that point in this forum. Next slide, thank you. Sorry, missed one. Next slide. So I've spoken about Ecuador and why we're so excited about it. We went to Ecuador from the Solomon Islands back in 2011 under the direction of the then executive of Solgold, Malcolm Norris, who did some great foundation work for us, and our porphyry expert, Dr. Steve Garwin. The great thing about the Eastern Pacific is the subducting oceanic plate is thick, carries a lot of metal, it floats high underneath the continental plate. It melts slowly, the metals distill slowly and richly into the top parts of these batholiths and form porphyry deposits. They get oxidised by the introduction of meteoric oxygen, and that scavenges the iron ore out of it into magnetite and leaves the base and precious metals to concentrate in sulfide phases. That's why these things are so big here. That's why they're so rich. And in Ecuador, because there's so many multiple mineralisation events, they tend to have gold-endowed cores in them. If you superimpose the area of Ecuador and those three metallogenic belts over northern Chile, you would cover 25% of the world's copper resources and 25% of the world's copper production. And that's waning in that country. And in Ecuador, there's the opportunity to define around about 20% of the world's copper resources, just from a scale and a geological point of view. And importantly, Solgold grabbed the first mover advantage after we discovered Alpala in 2014, and we were able to go and peg 14 different targets covered by 75 granted licences across 3,200 square kilometres, and it provides us with one of the most critical elements for the evolution of a junior to a major, and that is title. Title is vital to us, and that's one of the recurrent mantras of the junior exploration industry when you're transforming yourself. So we have this great opportunity. The ore bodies are big in this part of the world. They're rich. Once you get onto them, you can define resources very rapidly. In fact, it's only cost us a little over $2 US per ounce equivalent to get to the mineral resource estimate number 3 at Alpala. 22 million ounces of gold, 10 million tonnes of copper. It's massive, and gold endowed, and the financiers love that. Next slide, please. Alpala's the first of many. These are the geological characteristics from MRE3. It's a vertically elongate ore body with a rich core in it, and this is going to give us a fast payback for the development funding. We're going to be using a block caving technique here. Anytime you can go to God and get your mining method for free, that's gravity. In a low capital cost environment, those large capital development costs are easily financeable, especially when you're looking at a gold-rich core, and we are. There's also great environmental advantages. In a new mining nation like Ecuador, you don't want to be causing too many environmental problems, and a big open cut with a lot of acid mine drainage from a pyrite-rich waste halo around the ore body is not what you want. So we're glad that Alpala has the configuration that it does. It also has some great logistical advantages. Next slide, please. It's in northern Ecuador. It's only 150 kilometres from 2 potential Pacific ports at San Lorenzo and Esmeraldas. There's a bitumen highway through the project. There's a river through the project. We can get water there. We don't have to build a pipeline and a desalination plant. We're 3 hours from an international airport on a sealed highway that's up to 6 lanes. You don't get any of these advantages in the high and dry Chilean Andes, and that's what's keeping the development costs for Alpala on the Cascabel concession relatively low. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, we're running our processes through to the ultimate development decision for Alpala in parallel. We're already collecting data to inform the detailed feasibility study, which we hope to be out by the end of 2021. We're getting close to the completion of the pre-feasibility study, just gathering all the sub-reports and the data in from the various investigations that are the components for that study, and we will combine that with the financing negotiations, offtake negotiations, fiscal negotiations with the government, the permitting processes, all at the same time, so that we can get up to a rapid development decision. New slide, please. Solgold has a registered and beneficial interest in 85% of this project, effectively through Exploraciones Nova Mining SA, which owns 100% of the Cascabel concession and the Alpala project and everything within 5 kilometres of it. And the junior shareholder in ENSA Cornerstone has a relationship with Solgold governed by Shareholders agreement. Under that, we debt fund them through to the completion of the feasibility study, following which we estimate that Cornerstone will owe us $52 million. At that stage, they will need to make a decision on whether they contribute or not. Under 10%, they would reduce to a 0.5% net smelter return, which we could buy for $3.5 million. An important element to note about this agreement is that Cornerstone is not able to use its equity in ENSA as security for debt funding, and we have a preemptive right and a permission right in respect of any dealings on that equity in ENSA. So Solgold's in a strong position in respect of the control and management of the Alpala project and Cascabel generally. Next slide. As I mentioned before, we've created a blueprint for the access, exploration, discovery and ultimate definition of large copper gold resources in these porphyry systems in Ecuador. And of course, the rubber hits the road with the drilling programs. We're hoping to come up with 5 or 6 major projects that we need to be drilling on, and we have a great relationship with our drilling contractor, Lance Hubbard at Hubbard Perforaciones. Lance has a large construction facility in southern Ecuador at Cuenca, and this is a photograph of him rapidly producing drilling rigs, which will very soon be shipped to Porvenir, so we can get up to 6 rigs on the Porvenir discovery, which we made in the last 2 weeks, and rapidly bring that to a resource. So we've developed this blueprint. It starts importantly with getting the social and community endorsement for our presence there, and we focus on a number of things with the Ecuadorian employees, their families and the governments at all levels, and that is jobs and education. We're very strong on making sure that we offer jobs to Ecuadorians wherever we can, and as many women and ladies as possible. 30% of the geological team at Alpala are female, and we aim to increase that ratio both at Alpala and indeed on all of our projects through Ecuador. So people in other parts of Ecuador can see what we've done for the local communities around Cascabel, and therefore we're getting a very accepting reception when we go into new project areas. Next slide, please. You keep hearing me talk about exploration discovery. It's critical to our success. The discovery and definition of Alpala in 2016 through to 2018 made a massive difference to our market capitalisation and certainly attracted the attention of the Western world's largest mining company, BHP, and Australia's largest and most successful gold mine in Newcrest. They can see in BHP the opportunity for not just a copper mine here, but a copper province. BHP largely built its copper business in northern Chile. Certainly they have some other great projects around the world, but like northern Chile was very important. They can see, I think, that there's a chance that can be replicated in Ecuador. Newcrest, of course, can also see the opportunity for a massive mining development here, and their familiarity with block caving, as they've been using at the Cadia project in New South Wales and Australia, is something that makes them probably more confident about the eventual outcomes for Alpala than many mining companies would be. So, you know, then you go into the value valley between discovery and ultimately getting the mine developed. But Solgold's method of dealing with the value valley is just to keep finding more of them. And we've shortened the value valley on Alpala by discovering Porvenir, and we will do that again and again and again with more discoveries like that. So Porvenir has been a very important element to the evolution of Solgold, and we're going to continue to replicate that. Certainly the upside in the gold price and the copper price is very important. It's attracting a lot of attention to us, especially when our exploration and discovery costs are only $2 an ounce, and Franco-Nevada is certainly a good example of that. That Franco-Nevada financing was a very beneficial one for us. It was certainly a way better option than diluting everybody in Solgold by some 20% to raise that $100 million to finalise feasibility on the Alpala project. New slide. These are our projects. You can see they're sort of scattered through the Ecuadorian chain. They have a spatial frequency of somewhere between 25 and 50 kilometres generally. It's the same spatial frequency that you see in northern Chile. and the location of these things is controlled by transcurrent faults across the Andean arc, especially where it bends. So see those places in the south and the north where the Andean arc bends. That's where you get the most movement, the most space created, and the highest frequency of mineralising events on the transcurrent faults. Hence you get big porphyries and rich porphyries. That's why we loved Alpala. That's why Alpala's so big. We can see that being replicated at Rio Mario, 30 k's to the southeast, and also hopefully at Chakal to the northeast of Alpala. In southern Ecuador, of course, we've got the Porvenir project there circled in red, and there's many other examples of high priority targets that we're working on to define drill targets in southern Ecuador. I'll tell you a little bit about some of these projects now. New slide. The first of these, of course, is Porvenir. We discovered it 2 weeks ago in a very exciting drill hole, PDH 2001. This, I think, will go down in Solgold's history as one of our greatest moments. The first drill hole at Alpala was nothing like this. We've encountered over 900 metres of copper mineralisation, both disseminated and in porphyry-style vein systems, multi-directional veins, typical porphyry mineralisation. It's centred around a magnetic pimple with a huge 1.7 kilometre long, 1 kilometre wide coincident gold, copper and molybdenum anomaly. We put our first drill hole, PDH 2001, drilling out to the east from the southeastern side of that centre. And as I say, we have good magnetic and geochemical models. This is the probability shell that we see from a mineralisation point of view at the moment that comes out of the geochemistry and the magnetics. The mineralisation was still going at 903.5 metres when we terminated the hole, but we wanted to get the rig busy drilling PDH 2002, which has the red label on it there. It's a bit steeper. It'll go a bit closer to the core. It still won't be in the modelled core, but we're expecting the mineralisation to be even stronger in that hole. It's underway, and I'm anxiously awaiting the first reports from the core boxes as they come back to the camp, and I don't think that'll be too far away. But you can see from the geochemical signatures there that we're certainly not in the centre of the system yet, and we're anxiously looking forward to getting up to 6 rigs initially for a 50,000 metre program on the Porvenir project. If you do your numbers on something a kilometre deep, a kilometre wide and 1,700 metres long, and just take a fraction of that, you end up with a very, very big ore body indeed. The grades at surface were better than they were at Alpala and Alpala Creek, and certainly longer, so we're very excited by that too. Here's some of the rocks. As I said, I'm a geologist. This is why I get so excited. Anytime you can pull core out of a hole that's got mineralisation over 900 metres, you get excited. The whole 900 metres is not like this, but quite a lot of it is, and that's why we're pretty excited. So, we can see a 1-to-1 gold to copper ratio at surface. We're expecting that in the drill hole like we did in Alpala, and looking forward to the assay results here. So, sorry, next slide there.
I don't think you can talk.
Next slide. Yeah, sorry, there's the rocks I was just talking about. Sorry, I might have jumped a few slides there. Got too excited. It's easy to get excited with this project, but hope there's a lot of geologists looking at this. Copper mineralisation is extremely visible, 1-to-1 ratio with gold in the surface. Next slide. Rio Mario is the sleeping giant. It's got a massive litho cap over the top of it, about the same size as Alpala. It's only 30 kilometres to the southeast of Alpala. Very similar geological terrain. We've got some great rock saw channel results there, over 90 metres of highly anomalous mineralisation, and we're preparing to drill the Varela target at the moment. Next slide. You can see the comparison there on the left with the between the lithocap and the mineralisation as evident at Rio Mario on the Varela target, compared with the Alpala target in the Cascabel project, some 30 kilometres to the northwest of us. So I'm going to speed up a bit here. I suspect I'm running out of time, but it's a very big system. It's well preserved. Next slide. It has a great magnetic signature, and next slide. The metallogenic model that we have is based on the Yerington deposit in the southwestern USA, and we can see that we have the same sort of geochemical element composition at surface as they have at Yerington. So it's potentially a very, very large, well-preserved system at Varela.
Nick, just interrupt for 1 second over here. I'm assuming you can hear me. Just in the interest of time, we're probably going to have to wrap it up in the next minute or so.
Okay, I won't be a sec. Very quick. Next slide. Cisne in southern Ecuador, the Selene project, another thing we're very excited by, a 2 kilometre wide, 1 kilometre, very coherent copper anomaly with magnetic anomalies associated as well, up to 2% copper in rock chip sampling. So we're working on getting drill permits for that. Next slide. Here's some of the outcropping copper mineralisation. You can see Selene there with a dense cluster of anomalous rock chip samples near the eastern side of the tenement. Next slide. The Santa Martha porphyry at Shareholders to the north of Porvenir has outcropping porphyry style mineralisation, very similar to what we see in the cores at Alpala. So we're also very excited by that, working on getting drill permits for that as well. Next slide. Well, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but Liam Twigger is our recently appointed chairman, and you'll be able to see him at Diggers. He's wandering around. You'll probably catch up with him at the Solgold booth from time to time. Jason Maud is the mainstay of our project in Ecuador. Been working with Jason for 20 years. Elodie Grant-Goody, recently appointed with a real focus on the ESG aspects of building one of these large companies and large projects. Next slide. From a management point of view, I just want to draw attention to Ingo Hofmeier, who's our GM of corporate finance. He's working on putting the $3 billion together to develop the mine, and Peter Holmes, who's managing pulling the studies together from a pre-feasibility and feasibility study point of view. And that's it from me. Thank you very much for hearing the Solgold presentation. Sorry I went a little bit over, but it's a very big story. It's about Ecuador. It's about building a major in an emerging mining nation. And we have the pipeline of projects, the management team, and in an environment of a very low global cost of capital and available funding for projects that have rich, high-grade, gold-endowed cores. We have a very exciting future. So thank you for having me.
Thanks very much, Nick.